Hello everyone, this is Carlos Frank, your personal financial coach, and today I'm coming to you with a gift. I have a gift for all the married couples out there, and even all of you that are looking to get married. This is going to help you. You know, in the spirit of Valentine's Day and the spirit of keeping marriages together, I went out and I got this red blazer and this red tie just for you, just so you can focus on love during these tips I'm going to give you. So today, what I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you 4 tips to never argue about money in your marriage again. 4 tips to never argue about money in your marriage again. Don't you want to hear that? I know I would have when I first got married, or even if you've been married for 20, 30 years and you're still having some challenges with your marriage. Listen to these 4 tips. So now, tip number 1, I want you to think about that movie. If you've ever seen it, remember the Titans. And it's a true story, and Denzel Washington played the coach in Remember the Titans, and he was bringing together a football team. And that's what I want you to think about. In your marriage, tip number 1, you are a team. And you must think of yourselves as a team. And what's the goal of a team? Well, the goal of a team is to win, and to win together, not apart. Because no matter what, if you're on a team and you're doing separate things, you have different agendas, and you just don't want to work together, it's not going to work. You're going to be on a losing team. So as husband and wife, spouses, you need to make sure that you're looking at your marriage as a team and wanting to work together and bringing in all those parts that's going to help that team accomplish one common goal. So that's tip number 1. Look at your marriage and look at your spouse and what you've come together as a team. Tip number 2. This is kind of funny, but look at your spouse and ask them this question. Who are you? You remember in the movie, Remember the Titans? You know, one thing that Denzel had the team come and do is they had to learn who each of their teammates were. Who was on the team? And a lot of times when I've been doing coaching here over the last 5 years and doing premarital coaching and marital counseling when it came to finances, man, one thing I realized is a lot of people don't know who they married. And of course, specifically, we're talking about financially. What's their financial personality? Now, take me for instance. I'm the type of person, when I think of money, I'm going to think of course, giving first, saving, but I'm also going to think about, what can we do to invest? What can we do for the business? You know, how can we make this grow right away? But guess what? My wife was totally different. Her first thought is, hey, let's go get the kids some clothes. Let's get some food on the table, some more food in the cupboards. Let's think about those things, those security things. And it took me a long time. It took me 3 to 4 years to finally figure that out. Hey, guess what? We're 2 different people coming from 2 different households with 2 different mentalities about money. So you got to understand that and ask your spouse, ask them, you know, who are you when it comes to the finances? What do you think when it comes to money? What's your first reaction when you get a lump sum of money? What are you thinking about? And by understanding that, that's going to help you in your marriage. Now, Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of his habits is seek first to understand, then be understood. Seek first to understand, then be understood. So that's tip number 2. Ask your spouse, who are you? So now, tip number 3 that's really going to help you never argue about money again in your marriage is you need to start scheduling regular meetings about money. Now, some of you might have to schedule meetings daily for a little while, because it's going to take time. If you've had a financial mess and you've never done this before and gotten together with your spouse and talked about the finances, talked about what your short-term goals are, your long-term goals. Hey, if you've never done a spending plan, which some people call a budget, but I like to call it a spending plan, it's going to take you a while to get that together. Come with your spouse and talk about those things, finding out who they are, and then sitting down together and doing your spending plan, your savings plan, and looking at those short-term and long-term goals you want to accomplish. So tip number 3, schedule regular meetings. And the great thing is, you know, you might have to meet every day for a little while, and that sounds rough, but your marriage is worth it. But eventually, you'll meet maybe just once a week. And then you'll be like me and my wife, we meet once a month just to make sure we're on schedule. You know, we pretty much, it took us several years to do this, but we got it on autopilot right now. And then you'll also schedule an annual meeting to talk about the long-term vision of your family and your finances, retirement planning, college planning. So that's tip number 3. Schedule regular meetings. Now here's tip number 4, the last tip on how to never argue again in your marriage about money. You ready for it? Resolve right now to never argue again in your marriage about money. And some of you out there, so Carlos, what? That means I'm always going to agree with my wife? I'm always going to agree with my husband? No, that doesn't mean you're always going to agree. But what you're doing is you're just making a decision right now to never argue again about money. Because let me tell you this, and most of you know this. There's a lot of things out there more important than money. And that one of those things is your marriage. Never let something like money get in between you and your marriage. Money's just a little thing. I know it revolves around us. You know, the clothes we wear, the food we eat depends on that. But your marriage is more important than the money. So resolve right now just to never argue about it again. Now you can disagree, and you should have some disagreements. If you're talking about it, you're going to have some. But remember, seek first to understand, then be understood. Find out where your spouse is coming from when they come to you. I remember I used to always get upset with my wife coming to me, hey Carlos, the twins need some more clothes. And I get mad at her, what do you mean they need new clothes? And then, you know, it dawned on me, hey, guess what? They're kids. They're going to grow up. And so I just had to understand that's my wife's first priority, is taking care of the family. And mine is, let's talk about business. So once we did that and we finally resolved not to argue about money, one way to do that is prior to your meetings, make sure you agree on that. We are not going to argue about money. We can have some spiritual debates, but we're not going to argue about money. So this is my gift to you. Those have been 4 tips on how to never argue in your marriage again. So tip number 1, remember, husband and wife, you're a team. Tip number 2, look at your spouse and find out, who are you? What's your financial personality? Tip number 3, start scheduling some regular meetings to talk about your finances and get through those meetings. And tip number 4, on how to never argue in your marriage again about money, resolve not to argue about money in your marriage. All right? So once again, I'm Carlos Frank, your personal financial coach, and I hope that you have enjoyed this gift.